it's Haley, and today I'm going to be doing one of my favorite videos ever, and that is, if you liked this, then you might like this. So I did one of these actually kind of semi-recently, but I already have quite a few more books to talk about, so I decided to just do another one. I hope it's not too soon since I did the last one, but you guys seem to like these. I think that it helps you choose what to read next because you'll kind of be like in the mood for something maybe similar to what you just read, so hopefully this will kind of help you out. So instead of focusing on each individual book's synopsis, I'm going to be focusing on the similarities between the two and why I think you would like one if you liked the other, or it can work conversely where you might hate one if you hated the other, you know? You never know. So without further ado, let's just get into it. So first of all, if you liked Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, which has been everywhere recently, so if you haven't heard of it yet, you should pick it up because it's fantastic. But if you did read this one and liked it, I think you would really enjoy Her Royal Highness by Rachel Hawkins. So I'm comparing an adult romance here to a teen novel, so just be aware that the sexual content is definitely going to be very different between the two of these, but at the core, I think the stories are both pretty similar and pretty heartwarming and just, so good. So these are both LGBTQ romances. We have a gay romance here with a bisexual main character, and then we have a lesbian romance in this book, and they are both dealing with royals. So we have a princess, and then we have a prince, and we also have the first son, so it's kind of the clashing of cultures, even though this is a commoner and a royal, and this one is two people who are in kind of a similar power situation. They still feature kind of similar characters that are really snarky, have that attitude, and both of these books were so fun to read, had a great sense of humor, but also packed a bit of an emotional punch, which is what I really like from my romances. So I definitely think if you're into the kind of worlds colliding thing and reading about royals in modern day society, and especially if you like sassy, spunky characters, then you should try both of these books. Now, since I was just talking about Her Royal Highness, which is a companion novel, I wanted to talk a little bit about Prince Charming, which is the first book in that companion series. So you don't have to read this one in order to read Her Royal Highness, but they're both really good, so I recommend that you do. But this one I think you would really enjoy if you liked The Princess Diaries, which I haven't actually read the book, so I'm kind of hesitant to compare it to the book, but if you enjoy the movie, I think you would really like this. That is definitely a worlds colliding thing where we have royalty and a commoner, and it's actually different in this one because the romance with the actual member of the royal family isn't the central romance. It's the main character's sister who is marrying a prince, so she gets thrown into that world, and there's like this whole huge scandal, and she has to kind of like act like a royal, kind of clean up her act a little bit, and she has the same kind of attitude as Princess Mia, so I thought it was so much fun to read, and it definitely reminded me of The Princess Diaries the entire time I was reading it. Next is another YA to adult comparison, so if you enjoyed Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan and McGuire, then I think you might like The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. Now, The Hazelwood is kind of controversial. It's one of those books that you either love it or you hate it, and like you're very passionate if you hate it, so bear with me here. If you did hate it, I'm sorry, but I think that both of these books do a really good job of twisting the idea of a fairy tale and having these common people go into these fairy tales and explore that universe and kind of probe at good and evil and what that really means. So this book deals with children who have gone to these fairy tale worlds, and then it's like what happens when they get back, and this one deals with a character whose grandmother has passed away, and her grandmother used to be a writer of these cult classic fairy tales. So her mom has gone missing and her grandmother has passed away, and she's trying to find her mother, and she ends up getting kind of twisted along the way. So I think if you like twisted and dark worlds and the idea of kind of manipulating a fairy tale, then you would probably like both of these. And I'm sorry if you didn't, once again, because I know there's so many people out there who don't like this book and are so aggressive about it, but I liked it, and I liked both of these. Next up, if you liked Amie and Roger's Epic Detour by Morgan Matson, then you might like The Geography of Lost Things by Jessica Brody. So these books are very similar at their core, but they're also very different stories. So they're both dealing with a road trip with an old flame. So in this book, the two characters have just broken up, and here it's old family friends who are coming back together again. And they both have a main character whose father has just died, but they had a good relationship in Amie and Roger, and in Geography of Lost Things, things, they didn't have a good relationship. So her estranged father has died, and she's kind of learning to cope with that and deal with grief that she doesn't entirely feel entitled to. So obviously the grieving process is pretty important for both of these stories, and it ends up taking you to unexpected places. So their road trips end up going on detours that you weren't really expecting. Do you get epic detour? You know, you see what I did there? Yeah. But ultimately, I think what connects the two stories is the fact that they are both journeys of self-discovery underneath the whole road trip thing. It's really about the main character learning to accept the death of their father and learning to accept who they are as well. And obviously there's kind of a bit of a romance in there with both of these, but I think they're both really good, impactful, emotional stories that will make you think. Next up, if you liked Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerri Maniscalco, then I think you would like Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro. I can't remember if I've actually compared these two before in a video like this, so I'm sorry if I have, but these are both really fun murder mysteries, which sounds weird to say fun murder mystery, but like they're intense but also enjoyable at the same time, and you have more of a romance plot line at the center of Stalking Jack the Ripper than you do with this one, but I still think the overall vibe of an easy to read murder mystery is still there for both of them. So this is a Sherlock Holmes retelling, and we have a gender bent Sherlock Holmes, and then in this book we are investigating obviously the murders of Jack the Ripper. So different time periods. This one is set in a modern time period, this one is set in the Victorian era, but at their core I think they have a similar sort of female who's really into trying to solve murder mysteries. So I liked both of these, and I think you might too if you're looking for a fun little mystery read. Next up, if you liked Scythe by Neal Shusterman, I think you might like Renegades by Marissa Meyer. So these, I feel like it's kind of a bit of an odd comparison, but at the same time, when I was reading each of them, I kept on thinking of the other because I had read Scythe and then I read this one, but then I reread Scythe after reading this one. So I hope that made sense. It got kind of confusing, but basically I think the core here is the good versus evil thing and how it's really exploring that. And we have these two sides and you're kind of getting both sides of the story there that you are investigating almost. So we also have humans that are given extra power and making these decisions for the greater good. And it's like, is it really for the greater good? Is it right? Like ethics come into question in both of these stories. There's also the added aspect of a utopian society rather than a dystopian society, even though a utopia is really a dystopia because there's not really such thing as a utopia, which you will know if you have read both of these. But overall, I think that they are both really great utopian books and they have very interesting characters and explore some really interesting things as well. So definitely check them out. And the final books that I wanted to talk about, I think I definitely mentioned in my last If You Liked This video, but I think I only mentioned them briefly as honorable mentioned. So I wanted to like actually talk about them. So that is, if you liked Illuminae by Amie Kaufman and J. Kristoff, I think you would like Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. These are both sci-fi books and they both deal with really cool technology. This is definitely told in a very different format as opposed to Skyward, which is pretty much just prose, but this is like prose but with like case files and stuff in there. It's very cool. Definitely if you ever see it in a bookstore, pick it up because it's super interesting. So just like flip through it and see if it's something for you because I definitely recommend it. But I loved the central role that technology took in both of these stories. They're very space focused, obviously, because they're sci-fis. That was a dumb statement, but I think the focus on technology is what made me really enjoy them because sci-fi is something that I usually struggle with, but the fact that they were so technological was so cool. And I think that the technology in both of these was built up very well and made for a very interesting story. And we also have some great spunky, sassy characters, which seems to be a theme of the books that I've been reading recently and that I'm talking about in this video, but I love me a good sassy, spunky character. So any book that I can read and get more of that, I'm definitely on board for it. So those are all the books that I wanted to talk about today. I hope that this helped you out if you were stuck on what you should be reading next, but please let me know if you do try any of these recommendations. I hope it works out for you. Just remember that everyone has different reading tastes, so it might not, but these are just books that definitely reminded me of each other. So that's going to be all for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!